well, that's fine. To me, it's you've got some good. They've got facts that they pulled out from some actual cases, and then they do their own take on them, kind of almost a little bit creating like an X-Files type story. Some of the stuff is very loosely true. Other stuff they kind of go in their own direction. And one of the things that they did in one of the recent episodes is they brought out remote viewing that was being done by the CIA. And in one of the episodes, they had...
Is that MK Ultra?
Stargate.
Right. And what they were doing under Jeffrey is they were basically having these individuals try to remote view things. And in their storyline, this is what I guess you could say sprung the Men in Black. That a few of the individuals in the agency broke away. And they basically became the Men in Black. That they've got these abilities for remote viewing, and they're the ones showing up at all these different sites. Well, the remote viewing, we did an exercise on that several years ago with one of the organizations I was with. And that's where, like you were talking about, Barbara, some of the connection came out. And in the exercise we did, the individual had two drawings that he was going to present to us, none of which we could see. He was actually not even close to us. He was like 1,500 miles away. And he says, I'm just going to look at these. And, you know, he says, you see if you can draw what I'm looking at. Well, to kind of make the whole long story short, I had this vision pop up in my mind of almost like a stick figure type person with their legs bowed, their arms kind of bowed. Their fingers were kind of like, almost like something was between their fingers only, closing. But the unusual thing is, Barbara, I could hear clicking in the background, in my mind. I could hear like a clicking, like a symbol. And it wasn't like a big symbol, it was like the little finger symbols.
Right.
Well, I went and just drew up the stick figure, and that was it. And next thing you know, he has another drawing, and I drew a rectangle three-dimensionally on a slant. And I started drawing all these things around it, pointing to these things, marking like green is here, gray is here. I started drawing like little circles around this rectangle, other little figure things coming off of it. And when he displayed the figures, he says, okay, now this is what I'm looking at. And he showed a building. And the building was like someplace in Siam, someplace around there. Well, he saw my stick figure and he goes, that's okay, that's interesting. I said, yeah, but look at your building. All around the roof of his building was the stick figure I'd drawn. It was dancers with symbols on their fingers. So I didn't see the building, I saw the figure on the building. And what was I thought unique is I heard the sound in my mind. The second drawing was actually a satellite above the Earth, and I even I matched the angle. The dish is in the same location. The gray was cloud cover. The green was some of the patches of Earth showing through. But I could also hear wind and feel like water, waves, and so forth that went along with it. Now, one of the things I was thinking about this the other day is it doesn't happen with everybody that I can't see everything is because maybe the individual who was on the other end had a very, very strong connection with me. That we were able to connect very strongly, and that image was able to transfer very quick, very well. That also happened in two other investigations, primary investigations they did. I could see everything through the witness's eyes, which was really scary. Well, I have tried some, and I think maybe the one thing that's kind of hindering it is I need that connection on the other end, Barbara. Maybe that's part of it. Yeah. If I could connect in with somebody, let's say on the other end, that may strengthen the connection, because I've tried some things like Area 51, Right Pat, other things along those lines. I really haven't had a whole lot of luck along those lines. Now, what I haven't tried to do is connect into some of these reported entities. Maybe one is hesitation, because who knows what would happen potentially.
Sure.
If you really think about it. That's one of the main reasons, maybe. And the other thing is maybe I almost need, to have that connection open for me so I can see what's going on, because the individuals I was doing investigations with were very open in describing it. They're very open talking about it. But I saw everything that they were described before they actually did describe it.
Well, you brought up an interesting point that I didn't even think about, the Men in Black being a offshoot of Stargate. Because when you think about it, and what you were saying was absolutely true. I mean, we talk about security of the Area 51, et cetera, as being just physical security, but what about a psychic security too, which is why you can't view into it.
That's the other thing, is, the CIA worked on this supposedly, I think the programs reportedly shut down, but who knows, maybe if there's some success, all you want to do is give disinformation and keep rolling with it. Maybe you scale it back and use it and keep on using it to a degree. But when I saw him present that in that Project Blue Book episode the other day, I think, maybe there is a little bit of truth to this. That maybe they do have individuals out there still remote viewing things from the psychic side. Well, Can't deny it, Barbara.
They thought that it worked, or they had some success with it working.
Exactly. They had some success with it working. And just in my own personal experiences, Henry, I mean, if I can do it, and I'm not trained, it just is one of those things that happened. That maybe it's, like you were saying, Barbara, it's some residual effects of some encounters I had years ago. That maybe that's what, created the connection to begin with. But it's just getting that connection established. But I mean, when it happened, Henry, I mean, it was scary it was just almost like I was sitting in that person's position, seeing everything they were seeing at the same time.
And he was powerful enough to be able to project those images for you to pick up on.
Yeah. And it was scary, because when I drew the first one, I drew the stick figure. I'm like, yeah, right. This is. But then when they showed the building, and I started looking at the building close around the edge here, these dancers were all going around the edge of the roof of the building, and their legs were bowed, their arms were bowed, and you could see the symbols on their fingers. And I'm like, how did I come up with that?
Yeah.
Especially when I heard the clicking, like the symbol clicking, before I ever saw the picture in my mind. It was like that's what was really blew me away. The same with feeling the earth. I mean, like everything, I kept thinking on the picture of the satellite, everything is like earth related. I can hear water. I can feel the wind. I could even feel the wind on my body. That's what was really blowing me away.
The interesting thing to me, too, is he wasn't focusing on that. And you saw it anyway. And so, he wasn't even actively projecting the figures on the side of the building.
No, because even when he told me, he says, well, it's a building. He wasn't focused on the characters on the building. And with the satellite, you're right. He was seeing the satellite, but he wasn't thinking of all the things related to Earth behind it.
Maybe maybe subconsciously he was, though.
It's possible. And I mean, I even had the details I was drawing, like the circles and stuff. That was actually the antennas on the satellite. And they were in the same position. So when I saw that episode of Project Blue the other night, I felt like an automatic connection. Wow, here they're doing this, and I can see that actually happening. One of the investigations I did some time ago was actually in the United Kingdom. An individual over there had an encounter that when he was a child, riding with his parents in the car. And when he started talking about it, that we were driving down the road, I told him what the road looked like. And he goes, that was it.
Huh.
I described the surrounding terrain. I described, the different situations involving it. And he was just kind of blown away. And I'm like, there had to be something strong on his end, I think, to help reinforce that.
And you didn't go over there. You was doing it from
No, I
here.
was doing it all from here.
Wow.
I wish I could have gone over. After this, we got to been hitting the pubs over there.
Yeah, this is how they save money on travel expenses.
Oh,
Yeah,
but it was kind of funny because I described the surrounding terrain. I said, well, the road you were going down was very narrow, almost basically like for one car. Yeah, and I said you had hedgerows on both sides, basically, something like hedgerows. That was it.
Well, we watch a lot of like Midsummer and all those British shows, and it seems to me like all the roads over there is like one lane roads almost.
Right. Well, I told him that too. I said, when you were going, it was actually a straight road to a large degree, the one they were on. Yeah. And they actually had a couple hours of missing time. Because when they got back they were eventually going to London, they got there, they noticed that they were off 2 hours on time. But I just felt a strong connection with him, that I was seeing all these things in my mind, even like in his position, looking up through like a sunroof of the car and seeing what the sky was like. But it just seemed just mind-blowing when that happened. That, you get a lot of reports. I've had a lot of reports from witnesses over the years that you don't feel that type of strong connection. Then out of the blue, something like this pops up that's really eye-opening.
Well, now, there's been a lot of stuff coming out from our government about the UFOs and the planes, chasing them, you might say. Other countries, are they releasing a lot of stuff, reports that they've had?
Well, Britain, you see the articles out now, and Britain is releasing what they're calling the X-Files. These are reports that they receive from the general public. These reports go back from like the 1950s to about 2009. They were reports that were turned into the government. The government actually had a group that was doing investigations. And in what they're saying now is after this, like 50 years of investigations roughly, that they really didn't find enough evidence to keep this thing going. And they've had so many inquiries coming in on these files, different incidents, and people filing like Freedom of Information Act requests. What they decided to do is just go public and say, okay, let's just put them all on a server. That way anybody who wants to look this stuff up can. What they'll do is they'll go back and most likely redact like the individual's names, addresses and stuff like that, personal information. But they'll put a lot of this information on to, number one, save money because they're there and you don't have to file a Freedom of Information Act request. And everybody doesn't have to jump through hoops to get them. They're there. But when I see how this came out, though, Henry, like how they presented, they said these are ones that were coming in from the public.
Right.
So this didn't necessarily say that these were sightings made by military or government personnel. These are ones that came in from the general public.